For the first time this season, the Mets blew a series, and the problem is this is just the beginning of a very tough stretch for this bullpen moving forward.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. And so far this year, the New York Mets have been on an incredible run throughout their season. They've only lost 2 series all year. This was the first series on Sunday that the Mets blew, because you look at the beginning of the season against the Houston Astros. The Astros just pitched outstanding in that series. The Mets never got anything going offensively. I don't look at that as a blown series. The Astros beat them. Then you look at the other series that they lost in Minnesota. In between, they had reeled off 4 series victories in a row. They go to Minnesota. They win the first game, lose the next 2. And you look at those 2 games the Mets lost. They trailed early in all 3 games. They did battle back and come close to winning that series, but the Twins walked it off in extras. And that was the story of the second series loss of the season. Since then, the Mets won 7 games in a row at home to sweep a homestand. They go on the road to face the Nationals, and now we've seen them blow 2 out of 3 games. The first game, the Mets had a really wonky game, sloppy play, triple play call didn't go their way, a lot that went into that loss, and ultimately holding on to a 4-3 lead because of a late comeback. They just can't get the job done with Ryan Stanek on the mound. Unfortunately, the game on Sunday ends in a very similar fashion. Stanek on the mound trying to hold down a 1-run save opportunity, and that didn't work out for the Mets. But everything that happened before it is why this really felt like the first bad loss of the year for the New York Mets, a loss that should have been avoided. When you open up the game and you score 5 runs in the first inning, bat around the lineup, you got to win that game. To make matters worse, the Mets are winning 7-1 by the time you got to the 7th inning. And yet they lost the game. Tylor Megill was outstanding. Again, the Mets lineup in the first, you had Lindor leadoff single on a softly hit ball. Soto and Alonso each drew walks to load the bases. Vientos sac fly. Marte draws a walk to reload the bases. Brandon Nimmo hits a sac fly. Luis Torrens and Luis Angel Acuna both get RBI hits. That's your 5-0 lead. The Mets tack on a run in the second, another in the 5th, and Megill through the first 6 innings was unbelievable yet again. He allowed 1 hit, 1 walk, struck out 8 through those first 6 innings. The 1 hit that he allowed was a solo home run, the first time a Mets starting pitcher has allowed a home run in a couple of weeks. And it was just a game that you never thought the Mets were going to ever lose. Because why would they? They're winning 7-1 through 6 innings. And they have one of the best bullpens in baseball. Well, I think the game was managed a little bit poorly. And of course, there's a play that you can't ignore. To start off the 7th inning, Juan Soto, a fly ball that he should have caught, lost it in the sun, turns into a leadoff double. But let's walk through what happened in that inning. Because the first thing was Tylor Megill going out to pitch the 7th. Now, he campaigned to go out there and throw that inning. And for me, I look at it one of 2 ways. In one respect, if you're going to do it, just give him the inning and let him pitch through it, because he was that good that even though he gave up a silly double, he strikes out a batter, then gives up a base hit. I would have trusted Tylor Megill to get those next 2 outs. Now, he was at 105 pitches, and I know they're hesitant to have a guy go well beyond that, but he was rolling, and he campaigned to be out there. I would either just give him the inning, don't send him out there at all, or have a much better contingency plan in place than Jose Butto. Going into this game, I talked about it on yesterday's show, Jose Butto was going to pitch. He was on 3 days rest. And I'm sure what Carlos Mendoza is thinking is, all right, we're going to try to steal an out or two, if not a whole inning, out of McGill, and then Jose Butto is going to pitch the rest of this game, and I can give everyone else in my bullpen a day off because this bullpen is tired again. That they need some rest. But here's the issue with that. Jose Butto this year, now they gave up an inherited run in this spot. He has allowed 5 of 7 inherited runs to score, and the first inherited run he got this season, which was in Griffin Canning's first start, Yordan Alvarez hit an RBI double, Butto comes in with 2 outs, and he gets the next out. That means that of the last 6 inherited runners that he's gotten, that he's inherited, 5 of them have come around to score. You can't keep putting them out there with runners on. To me, no situation am I throwing Butto on the mound unless if it's a clean inning. And the stats bear it out this year when he's gotten a clean inning to start his appearance. 8 innings pitched, 3 walks, 4 hits, 1 earned run. When he has come into a situation where he's inherited runners, 7 innings pitched, 12 hits allowed, 4 walks, 6 earned runs. And that's not even counting the inherited runs that have come in to score. So in those situations, Butto, in 7 innings of work, 11 runs have come across. Are you kidding me? You can't do that. And I hate to be the guy that nitpicks the manager. I never want to do that because, Carlos Mendoza, if Butto comes on, gets a ground ball, it's a double play, the inning's over, he finishes the game. What an amazing job by Carlos Mendoza. He navigated it all, saved so many bullets in that bullpen, got stolen out with McGill, and Jose Butto rested, was able to get the final 8 outs of the game. Amazing. And so ultimately it's Jose Butto's fault that he can't come into those situations, but he can't come into those situations. So you have to do one of 2 things. Either you DFA him, which sucks because I still think there's actually probably a pretty decent starting pitcher in there with Jose Butto. And because of that, he's going to get claimed off waivers. And it's a viable big league arm that you're just losing. So you hate that. He doesn't have any options. If you put him on waivers, he's going to get claimed. At the same time, you cannot throw him out there anymore with runners on base. He can work multiple innings. And so the Mets should have just gone to him in that 7th inning and not even put McGill out there. Or they should have had Huascar Brazaban ready to go as the guy that's going to come in that spot. That's what they should have done. Because Reed Garrett wasn't available, Edwin Diaz wasn't available, Max Kranick wasn't available. I get it. They were in a tough spot. You know what? I would have rather seen Jose Urena come in and pitch in that spot. Not really, but I'm just like to illustrate how bad it's been. I'd almost go there. So that was the thing that I really took issue with this Mets loss. And look, Brazaban pitched himself into trouble too. He might not have gotten the job done. I don't know. But he pitched himself in and out of trouble in the 8th inning. It was just a rough 6th inning or 7th inning, where the Nationals get the fluky double that Soto should have caught. Base hit off of McGill that scores a run with 1 out. Butto comes in, gets a strikeout, then gives up a couple of singles. That forces in the inherited run and puts a couple runners on, and he gives up a 3-run homer. And now it's 7-6. Now, granted, the Mets had their opportunities to win this game because they had a chance in the top of the 9th inning where they have Juan Soto and Pete Alonso in scoring position with nobody out. Soto base hit, Alonso hit by a pitch, wild pitch allows both of them to advance. And you have a golden opportunity to tack on some insurance runs. Now, Mark Vientos hit one hard, but C.J. Abrams makes a diving stop, holds the runners, gets Vientos out. If you want to continue to rip on Carlos Mendoza, I would say maybe that would have been a moment when Starling Marte comes up to put Jesse Winker out there because I think he gives you a better at-bat. If not Jesse Winker, Jeff McNeil. You had a couple of lefties on your bench that you could have gone to against a right-handed reliever to try to get a fly ball. Because what does Starling Marte do a lot? Hits the ball on the ground. What did he do in that spot? Hit the ball on the ground. Mets couldn't score. And then Brandon Nimmo's had a dreadful start to the season, grounds out as well. That's a brutal inning. So a brutal series of events. And then you get to the bottom of the 9th inning. Ryan Stanek comes on. It's another meltdown. Gives up a leadoff double. This was a real one. Gets a ground out, then a base hit, scores a run. That was a drawn in infield C.J. Abrams. Eerily similar to what we watched on Friday night. Gets the base hit. walk to James Wood, and then a ground ball to Pete Alonso turns into the final play of the game. Bad play by Pete, completely air mails the throw to first. But at the same time, Ryan Stanek didn't get over to cover. So Pete sort of waits back on a grounder. Now he's throwing off his back foot kind of, and he just lofts it too high, and Stanek can't get it. And that's how you lose a game. So, yeah, Pete made a mistake on that error, but he's far down my list of people to criticize in that moment because you have Butto, who blew the game, Mendoza, who put Butto in a bad position. You have Soto, who lost a fly ball in the sun. That's tough. You can't really blame him, but still a rough moment. And then Stanek just is not a closer. And this is where the Mets could be in for a tough stretch because over the next few weeks, their pitching is going to be tested. I sort of alluded to that on yesterday's show, but I want to really hammer that point in now as the picture is getting more and more clear with how the Mets are going to try to structure this bullpen without AJ Minter. And it's not the prettiest of pictures when you're talking about high leverage arms to get big timeouts, especially when Ewing Diaz is not available. I want to go through all that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 bonus today. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. If you're liking the video today, throw a like on it and leave a comment. Who do you want to see pitch in high leverage situations outside of Edwin Diaz right now? Who do you trust the most outside of Edwin and Reed Garrett? I mean, I guess Reed Garrett's the easy answer, but outside of those two, I'm a little bit concerned with where this Mets bullpen is at because you lose AJ Minter. He has now officially hit the IL. That happened on Sunday. Saying it might be a lat issue or it's still the tricep. We really don't know, but there was a lat issue that was kind of floated out there as that might be the real lingering concern right now. We don't know a timetable. We have no idea when he's going to come back, but I think the expectation is he's going to miss a decent amount of time. I don't think he's going to be on the IL for 15 days and that's it. So now everybody moves up a spot in that bullpen when it comes to leverage. And all of a sudden, the Mets are once again in a spot that we've seen in the past where you don't know what the bridge is going to be to Edwin Diaz because you have Reed Garrett, who's been amazing, but because of Stanek and Minter, the Mets have had the ability to deploy Reed Garrett in the 6th inning at times. In the 5th inning, they've been able to pitch him when the starting pitcher gets in trouble, like the game today would have been a perfect opportunity for Reed Garrett, but he had thrown 2 days in a row, so you can't have him pitch 3 straight. I imagine he'll be available today on Monday, but you still don't know. Regardless, tough spot for the Mets because you no longer have that safety blanket that was AJ Minter. So who's going to be the 2 setup men? It would likely be Garrett and Stanek. Who gets those opportunities for saves when Diaz isn't available? It needs to be Garrett, but Garrett, you can't run him into the ground either. So the Mets are in a tough spot right now because Stanek is now 0 for 2 in those situations. You can't go back to the well there. I think Max Kranick might be the best guy to pitch in a safe situation at this point, or Huascar Brazoban, who has done it a couple times this year. But now those guys need to be pitched in leverage a little bit more. This bullpen is in a weird spot. And the guy that came up was not Dediel Nunez, who would have given you another setup, man. Instead, it is Jose Urena who's up. Now, when you understand the Mets situation with their rotation, that decision makes more sense because they need a starting pitcher this week. Kodai Senga can't start on regular rest. So you're going to have Griffin Canning go on Monday. You're going to have David Peterson pitch on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, you're going to need a spot starter. That could be Urena. But the whispers are that the Mets are lining up Brandon Waddle to take that start because the Diamondbacks have a lineup that fares much better against right-handed pitching than left. So you can stack a couple lefties in this series with David Peterson and Brandon Waddle, and Waddle has been outstanding in Syracuse. So let's just say that start goes well. Do you send Waddle down and bring up Daniel Nunez? Well, the problem with that is in the not too distant future here, the Mets are going to need a sixth starter again. They don't have any off days this week. So it'll turn right back around. The Mets are going to play against the Diamondbacks. Then they're going to go to St. Louis and play the Cardinals. And then they're going to go to Arizona and face the Diamondbacks again. Theoretically, if Waddle pitches well, maybe you want to keep him in the rotation to make those two starts. And then if you do, you're down a man in the bullpen, or you have to call somebody else to make that spot start. Could it be Paul Blackburn? Problem with Blackburn, he made one appearance in his rehab stint so far on April 19th, pitched 2 innings, then he got sick and he hasn't pitched again. So I don't know if he's going to be ready to go next week. Probably not. So then is it Urena? Are you better off just going with Urena now and then saving Waddle for the next start? Because maybe having Waddle go against the same team twice isn't the best course of action anyway. Do you at that point go back to Justin Hagenman? You could, but Hagenman just gave up 7 runs in a 7-inning game in Syracuse where the Mets scored 20 and they beat the Worcester Red Sox 20-12 in the second game of doubleheader. I don't know if Hagenman's going to be great in that opportunity. So the Mets are in a very tough spot right now. This is what's going to happen in any season. It's not going to be smooth sailing all year long. You're not going to just win series after series after series, wire to wire, and not have any stretches where it's a little bit of a struggle. And this might be a stretch where it's a struggle, where, yes, you go home after this one in D.C., but you're playing a frisky Diamondbacks team. I know they're on a little bit of a cold stretch lately, but we know the Diamondbacks are a good baseball team. Then you go to St. Louis. Cardinals are better at home than they are on the road. And then you go to Arizona, and through it all, you're going to have a couple of spot starts. And because of that, you're going to pitch a man down in the bullpen. The only thing the Mets could do, they could stick with Urena for Monday and Tuesday. They can let Waddle make that start, and then they can bring up Daniel Nunez. And they can have Nunez for a week and see how it looks. And if he looks good and he's finding himself pitching and leverage and he looks like Daniel Nunez from last year, you keep him and you make another decision. Whether that is a unfortunate send down of a Braziban or a Kranick, which I don't even think you could do to Kranick, so maybe it's Braziban just because he has options, or you stomach losing a guy that you're not going to be able to get back, that you have to expose to waivers, and when you need that second starter, you DFA Danny Young or Jose Butto. And the Mets are not going to make any of these decisions before they have to. So for now, it'll be Urena for the next couple days. Probably Waddle will make that start on Wednesday. They'll decide if they want to keep him or send him down. If they send him down, then they're going to bring up another fresh arm. Who will it be? It won't be Urena because unless someone's injured, he can't come back. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. They can just keep cycling different guys from Syracuse that aren't Daniel Nunez if they're waiting for him to be 100%, or they go to the well with him and you see what it looks like. And if it doesn't look good, then maybe he's the guy that goes down for that second spot start. But this is the first time this season when this bullpen is really being tested, where this bullpen has had an injury to it. They're worn down, and it feels like they've been this way now for a little bit because there hasn't been as many off days lately, and they're trying to catch their breath collectively as a bullpen. And so you either need a starting pitcher to go super deep in a game to help. You need that next off day to come, which it's not going to for a minute. No off days this week. Or you need some guys to step up out of that bullpen. Some of the lower leverage guys like a Danny Young, who has looked a little bit better as of late, like a Butto when he gets another opportunity, and hope that you can find your way to getting some of those other high leverage guys rest, and things line up where Edwin Diaz is taking these save opportunities, not Ryan Stanek. But this is a tough stretch for the Mets. It certainly is. They're going to have to see what to do and how to go about it. But if Jose Butto can't pitch with traffic, they might get to a point where they got to make a tough decision and potentially lose what could still be a very good arm for them for years to come. Sometimes that's just the business of baseball. He's out of options, and it's really unfortunate that he is. But he's a guy that had to be on the 40-man roster for a long time because he's been in this system forever. And that's just what happens. But speaking of being in the system, the Mets made a ton of different promotions throughout their farm system on Sunday. So I want to spend a segment talking about who got the call up to another level, and also give you some updates on Ronnie Mauricio, who finally played an official game, and Brett Baty is right back to tearing the cover off the ball in Syracuse. We're going to go through all that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live, and the Mets are back in town for a series against the Diamondbacks this week. If you want to go and check out Citi Field for the first time this year, or head back to Citi Field where it's been an absolute party, make sure you're using Game Time, the place to go for last-minute tickets with last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time will take the stress out of buying MLB tickets, plus the ticket prices drop as Game Time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. I don't buy my tickets until I'm about to walk into the ballpark. Pull open the Game Time app, find the best possible deal for me, view my seat before I buy so I know exactly what to expect when I arrive, and then I can get my tickets in a matter of seconds sent straight to my phone. It is so easy. Take the guesswork of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service. We get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways and get a live graphic sent to your phone each day so you knows in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Mets farm system. Ronnie Mauricio played his first official game in Port St. Lucie. He'd been playing in extended spring games, but he finally got in a game where the stats were recorded, went 1 for 3 with a stolen base. He was a DH in the game. Be curious to see when he gets back on the field, see how long he's in St. Lucie before the Mets bring him right back along to Syracuse, where he can really get a taste of if he's ready to make an impact at the big league level. For now, it's just about being healthy. I think it's still a long road for Mauricio, where I don't know if I'd expect him to be called into action at the big league level until almost the second half, which sounds crazy, but I just think you still have Brett Baty ahead of him on the pecking order. And right now it's just a matter of making sure Mauricio is good. Now, if he ends up in Syracuse and he's playing every day and he's hitting 350, well, then we can have that conversation. But we're still far away from that. He's in St. Lucie and he's DHing, but it's still a great sign, great step in the right direction. Hopefully, at some point this year, he really will be ready to make an impact for the Mets. Now, in Syracuse, as I mentioned earlier, there was a 20-run game by the Syracuse Mets. Jared Young had a big game. Jackson Reitz drove in 7. Also seemed like the Red Sox walked the world in that one. But Brett Baty played his first game back in AAA, went 2 for 4 with 2 doubles, 3 RBIs, and he drew a walk. So good game for Baty. But let's talk about these minor league promotions. We're going to start from the bottom, work our way up. And AJ Ewing has gotten that promotion from low A to high A. He was outstanding in Port St. Lucie this year, 17 games played, very reminiscent to Nick Morabito last year, where he just was on fire to start the season and eventually got the call to Brooklyn. For Ewing, hitting 393, 507 on base, 623 slug, 1 homer, 3 triples, 4 doubles in 17 games, 19 RBIs, 13 stolen bases on 15 attempts, playing center field for the first time, looked good out there. Be interesting to see where he's going to play in Brooklyn, because you have Carson Bench and Eli Serrano who've been splitting time in center field. These are high draft picks for the Mets. Bench, their first rounder last year. I think Serrano was in the 4th round, but guys that the Mets are really, really high on that are going to still get some time in center. But now Ewing ends up in that rotation. I guess they'll all play all over the outfield, get some DH days. They'll figure it out. But it is a very talented lineup in Brooklyn with the Cyclones. If you're in New York, go check out that team, because some of the top prospects in the Mets system are out there. I just mentioned 3 of them with Bench, Serrano, and now Ewing joined the fold. Marco Vargas also got a promotion. Vargas was the infielder the Mets got in the David Robertson trade. He joins the other prospect the Mets got in that trade, Ronald Hernandez, a catching prospect who's up in Brooklyn. So now those two guys are teammates once again. Vargas in St. Lucie hit 395, 519 on base, 512 slug. That was in 12 games. He is more a glove first player as far as, his ability to play elite defense up the middle, particularly at second base. But he also has an ability to get on base at a really good clip, has very good plate discipline. If the hit tool comes along and he can hit for a high average, I mean, this is a guy that could be a starting second baseman in the big leagues. If not, got a chance to be a really good utility guy. So now he's up in now he's up in Brooklyn from St. Lucie, and he's joining an already loaded infield that has Jesus Baez and Jacob Reimer, a couple of really good third base prospects. Boston Barrow at shortstop. Vargas will probably chip in there as well. I haven't seen, but I'm sure maybe Baez is moving around the infield a little bit, maybe getting some time at second. But they also have DeAndre Smith, who I talked about on Friday's show. If you want to go back and listen to my breakdown of some of the top position player prospects in this system, I mentioned Smith on that episode. I mentioned Ewing on that episode. I think I might even mention Marco Vargas. But regardless, DeAndre Smith's been great this year too. So they got a lot of mouths to feed in that infield. Not to mention you have Chris Suero, who is a catcher, but also has played some first base and can play some outfield. So they got a lot of guys that are in that lineup that are really talented. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of them get their playing time, but still exciting to see Ewing and Vargas get that promotion up to Brooklyn. Joining them as a pitcher, Chandler Marsh. He was undrafted, signed last year. He was lights out in St. Lucie. In 8 appearances, he allowed just 2 hits, walked 1, struck out 14 in 10 2/3, was just not getting challenged at that level. So now he moves along to see what he can do in Brooklyn. Now we're looking at a couple of promotions from Brooklyn to Double-A, some pitchers and exciting pitchers at that. You got Zach Thornton now joining what I think is clearly the most exciting rotation the Mets have in their minor league system. That's in Double-A. You have Noel McLean. You have Jonah Tong, 2 top 10 prospects in this system. You have Jack Wenninger, who's pushing to be a top 10 prospect in this system with how good he's pitched. I talked about all those guys at length on, that was the yesterday's show? Either Saturday or Sunday show. They're all blended together. I think it was Saturday's show in the final segment where I talked about some pitching prospects. But they have those 3 guys, and now Thornton gets added in. Thornton, left-handed pitcher who was drafted in the 5th round by the Mets in 2023. He made 4 starts in Brooklyn, allowed 1 run in 20 2/3 innings pitched with 25 strikeouts and just a couple walks. So great start to the season, not getting challenged enough. Bump him up to Double-A, where he joins that rotation with a ton of studs. Jonah Tong, mentioned him actually too, because he had a really good start today, if I'm not mistaken. Let me pull up the stats on it. I think he struck out 10, if I'm not mistaken. 10 strikeouts in, 4 2/3? I got to say, MILB, why do you make getting stats so difficult to find? There's some weird block, and it's tough. Gonna have to go Google search instead, because MILB is not working for me here. Yeah, so he struck out 10, and he pitched in 4 innings, allowed just 1 hit. So looks like it was 4 scoreless, if I'm not mistaken, for Jonah Tong. He struck out 10. His start before, they struck out 9. So it's good to see Jonah Tong really starting to rack up the strikeouts and, again, showcase the type of pitching prospect he can be when he is right. But, again, Thornton now joins that rotation. That's really exciting to have 4 really promising arms to watch in Double-A. And Ryan Lambert, a guy that I talked about before the season, especially during spring breakout. He's the reliever that came from Oklahoma, dominated the MLB Draft League, and then the Mets picked him in the 8th round, strikes out the world, and throws well over 100 miles per hour. He can touch 102, 103 miles per hour. In 8 innings pitched in Brooklyn, he struck out 17 and walked just 1. So now he's up in Double-A. He could fly through there. You never know. He might be in Triple-A before we know it. This is the guy that can pitch in the big leagues this year with that fastball. It's just a matter of finding the secondaries to work off of it, really honing in on his control a little bit more. But he hasn't been walking anybody. He's just been able to challenge. The question is, as the hitters get better, they can eventually catch up to 102, 103. And when you get to that point, can you make adjustments, have a secondary pitch that'll get people off of the fastball so the elite plus fastball can play up. But Lambert is absolutely a name to watch. And also another one, Ramon Gonzalez, I believe, is the pitching prospect's name. This is my fault for not putting him in the news for the show today, but it's Ramon Gonzalez? I believe it is. He threw 104.5 miles per hour in St. Lucie, which was insane. 104.5 miles per hour, and he was a starting pitcher in that one. He threw 3 innings. It's not Gonzalez. It's Ramon Gomez. My apologies. But yeah, unbelievable to throw 11 of his 12 pitches in that start reached triple digits. Slowest offering from his fastball was 100.2 miles per hour, but he threw one at 104.5. So Ramon Gomez, another name to watch in this system that seems to just be spawning pitchers all over the place. Mets are in a really good shape in the farm as they continue to move into the David Stearns era where the scouting, I'm sure, has gotten better and better. The development is getting better and better. And before long, the Mets might turn into East Coast Dodgers for real. I'm not talking about just winning division titles and all that. I'm talking about being able to consistently churn out talent in the minor leagues, because what that affords you is the ability to take that minor league talent, turn into big leaguers in the trade market, and continue to supplement your roster, both from prospects helping on, actually your MLB roster, but also on the trade market, allowing you to plug holes that way. Seems like the Mets are really getting a lot better with this system. I'm excited to see where it's going to be at in a couple of months when the season has really rolled and we have large sample sizes to work with. The Mets could have a lot of different starting pitchers knocking on the door of AAA, if not the big leagues, and hitting prospects that might be flying through the system. It just seems like there is a surplus of talent in a way that there hasn't been in some time in the Mets farm system. So really exciting stuff going on there. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. On tomorrow's show, I'll break down the final game of this series between the Mets and the Nationals. Actually, we got a day game. So now I'm thinking about it. I will be probably doing a live stream today. Actually, it's a 4:05 start. So Chris actually should be good to do that. For those of you who still aren't familiar with this, we have the Locked On Mets postcast hosted by Chris Schubert. I imagine he'll be good to do this one, so I don't think I'll have to pinch hit for him today. But those shows when he hosts are labeled Locked On Mets postcast. If I'm hosting a post-game stream, it's labeled like a typical Locked On Mets episode, so I'm on that one. But regardless, tomorrow's show, I'll be breaking down whatever happened in the final game of the series. I'll be previewing what lies ahead as the Mets are set to take on the Diamondbacks, and they get to come home for a nice little 3-game set before they head right back out on the road. Anyway, as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. It's our show that breaks down everything going on in Major League Baseball each day throughout the season. You can find it on the Locked On MLB podcast feed as well as the Locked On MLB YouTube channel.